everybody, to the next episode of Chiefs Focus First and 10. You are here with JP and Caleb, and we got a special guest on. We got Cliton Morris on. He is a friend of Caleb's from school and has a lot of football knowledge, a lot of Chiefs knowledge, and we're happy to have him on. How you guys doing?
Good, man.
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, man, thanks for coming on.
No problem.
So, some interesting stuff this week. The Tyreek Hill thing's been a big topic. We can get to that at some point during the show. But unless we want to start off with it, it's really up to you guys, however you want to do it. But it's a little interesting. I think people may be taking it the wrong way. They may not be. I don't know yet. None of us have seen the full clip of the podcast, so we don't know what is the outcome of that last phrase or sentence, if you will. So it's just going to be it's going to be interesting. What do you think? What do you guys think?
So what I think kind of see overall from the podcast clip, I mean, obviously what he's trying to do is he's trying to get people to come on to his podcast, listen to what he has to say. Yeah. When it comes to that part where he's saying suppressing stats or that's brought up, it's kind of interesting to me because for the Chiefs, it was always Kelsey or Hill, 1A or 1B. He was considered number one option, and it literally was Mahomes' security blanket several times. And Tyreek Hill, for the most part, always had a 1,000-yard season besides when he was frequently injured. Well, he got injured during that season where the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. So to see that come out, it's kind of like the Chiefs stayed with you. You've done a lot of great things, but to see that was very frustrating. And it's kind of like, well, let's hopefully see what the rest of the clip is. But the Chiefs kind of help elevate you to an extra level with Mahomes. So that's just kind of my take on it. What do you think, Quentin?
Well, I think we talked a little bit about this off camera, but I think it's frustrating just as a fan to see the Kansas City Chiefs back Tyreek Hill and some of his off the field problems that he had. And I don't really want to go down the that rabbit hole of what happened, what didn't happen. But the fact is that information got out and he was thrown into the court of public opinion, and the Chiefs backed him there. They stood behind their guy. And so to see, him helping with the Super Bowl runs and him helping us win a Super Bowl, and that team really coming together, just to have him turn around, and it just sort of felt like a final jab that just wasn't necessary to really be had. So it just kind of is something that just sucks to see and to hear about.
Yeah. We're going to have to find out, again, I think that was more of a teaser to get people to listen. Like Caleb said, it was more of a teaser to get them to listen to the podcast. And he may say something extremely positive at the end of that phrase. We just don't know yet. I don't know that he's going to take too many jabs at Kansas City. I know that from what I've understood and what I've heard, that there was some animosity, not with him and Reed or him and Veach or Mahomes or Kelsey or anyone else for that matter, but there was with a coach. I'm not going to get into that whole situation because I'm sure everybody already knows who that coach is, but it sucks to a degree that he's gone, but Veach did this the right way, and he brought him in. We got 5 picks for him, which that's unprecedented. He went to a place that he would have wanted to retire at when he got out of the league, not retire for, but retire completely and move to Miami. We've said this time and time again when other outlets have said he didn't want to be in Kansas City anymore. That is absolutely not true. He did want to stay here, and we offered him a lot more money than we actually thought he was going to. At one point, they got, within $2.5 million of his contract. But it was more of a, let's get the most out of what you can while you still can play and you're still a viable player. And that's what he's doing. And it's a 3-year contract. It's not like it's, 5-6 years or something of that nature. Who knows if he'll come back? I've had this weird feeling that he would come back and retire as a Chief. We'll just have to see how that podcast plays out and what he actually has to say about it.
Would you guys, I'm kind of curious, would you guys pay him $30 million a year if you were Veach as the GM?
No.
Well, I think first of all, we have to recognize that $30 million isn't $30 million, right? Mm-hmm. That's just the big wow number. So right off the bat, it would just depend on what the guaranteed is. Would I guarantee him $30 million a year? No way. Would it, if you want to talk more like the 20 to 25 sort of around, what the other receivers are getting paid around the league.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think you could swallow that. I think you could figure that out. Especially when you only have one guy on your defense, you're really paying superstar money. And then you're paying Frank Clark, what he's getting paid. But yeah, I think you could figure it out, especially with the way the Patrick Mahomes contract is structured. You could figure it out, but the $30 million is just not doable when you have a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes being paid what he is.
And the way I kind of figured it is when you look at the end of the day, you're paying your quarterback a lot of money. You can't give that $30 million to one play theoretically. You have to split up in 2 and 3 different players. And that's what the Chiefs have done complete with the wide receiver room. They have overhauled it. It's honestly, I think it's a lot better because you have many different people that can destroy a team at any given moment. You got guys like Justin Ross, we'll talk about later. You got guys like Kelsey still there. Josh Gordon could possibly be back in the mix, and you have all these other players that are there and can be helpful. So I think it's kind of like, well, they did better there, but they also were able to bring in guys such as a Rojo, Ronald Jones II, a great running back. So, I mean, when you make trades like that and get pieces in return, it's more beneficial because you just really can't do it as a GM personally. It's just too much money.
Well, and the funny part about it is that, we have been talking about this on the show for a while, but, we became predictable. We were complacent and we were predictable. And this has been a topic of conversation that we've known about for a while, but when you become predictable, it poses an issue. Veach did something that was really smart and almost unprecedented in a way. He waited for all these teams because he knew what was coming. All these teams went out and they signed these speedy, quick corners, smaller safeties, somebody that could keep up with Hill, or at least try to. And he did a complete 360 on him. And really, when you think about it, nobody else had an opportunity as long as Hill was on our team. Now you've got a real spread offense with some big wide receivers that are going to be able to do a lot. And you also have Jody Fortson that's coming back. You have, a lot of different players that have not seen the field simply because of Tyreek Hill. And now we're going to be able to see that, and it's going to throw other teams off because they're not going to know how to defend us. They're just not. I mean, you got too many weapons. The 2 high safety shells worthless now because they really don't know how they're going to defend us. It was just, sometimes you have to look at it from a different perspective. And if it's time to move on, it's time to move on. Yeah, it sucks as Tyreek Hill. It sucks that he was one of the best wide receivers we've ever had. And he did a lot for this team, but in the same aspect, you have to evolve. And if you don't, you become complacent and then predictable, and then you're not going to get very far. And the Chiefs have fixed that problem.
Yeah, I think you're right. The cover 2 defense really tore us apart, especially towards the end of the season. Just look what happened in the AFC Championship game. That's how they beat us. I remember that overtime, that Patrick Mahomes interception. The Bengals sent 3 guys, and they had 8 in coverage, and it was just everybody was in their zone, and it seemed like everybody was shifted towards the Tyreek Hill side of the field. And so no matter where he threw that ball, it was either going to become a PBU or it was going to be intercepted. And just because of the way that the scheme was being run. And I'd like to think that, have you guys seen the movie Moneyball about the A's organization?
Yeah.
Okay. Caleb, have you?
I have not, but I've heard of it before.
Yeah, so the gist of it is that the Oakland Athletics lose their star players in the offseason, and what they need to do is that because they're not going to re-sign their star players, they use a new form of analytics, young analytics, to replace their players, to replace the not the players, but the impact that those players were having on their team. And I think that's exactly what you can talk about the Tyreek Hill trade and the offseason moves. We are never going to be able to replace Tyreek Hill. It's not going to happen. Tyreek Hill is such a unique athlete. What Tyreek Hill can do with coverages and how they would shift, and when you would send him in motion, the whole defense would freak out because he's moving around. Tyreek Hill is a unique athlete, and as Chiefs fans, we cannot sit here and say we need to replace Tyreek Hill. What we need to replace is the production that Tyreek Hill had. And that's why bringing in people like Juju and MVS can help replace some of the production that Tyreek Hill had. I think that that's what these moves were about. The Sky Moore pickup, all of these things were about replacing the production, because outside of Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, there really wasn't any production for the rest of the receiving room. And so I think bringing in all these guys, collecting what they're going to be able to do as a unit, I don't think this offense is going to lose any steps. I still think Patrick Mahomes is going to be able to work with this room. It's just that you're not going to have two superstars on the field. You're going to have Travis Kelce and a collection of other, good guys coming together and replacing the production that Tyreek Hill had.
Good. And one thing, I want to raise you something, Quinn. You bring up a great point. Outside of Tyreek Hill and Kelce, there was nobody. Pringle, who we let walk, I understand it. Pringle did a pretty good job. He had some issues with some drops. But, oh, my goodness, Demarcus Robinson would run backwards all the time. And it's just like, come on. And it would be like they would try to throw him the ball, and he would take like 3 steps backward, or he would drop the ball, or an interception would happen. And I understand they were trying to keep him for familiarity. But for me, in JP, I don't know if you agree with me with this when we listening to the podcast, but at a certain point, I was like, come on, you got to let these younger guys get in there. Yeah. Let Dieter play, for goodness sake, at least he's going to go a little bit more, maybe harder. And I kind of felt like you finally got a wide receiver room. You can kind of do that because you're kind of like, oh, well, Tyreek Hill can do this. But yeah, like Quentin said, production is what needs to be replaced. And that's what they did. They got guys that can do that. And in order for a team to be great, you have to keep upgrading on these players. That's why I'm a big proponent that the NFL needs to have some type of farm system similar to the MLB. Because if you can have that and have production and have a lot of good players come through the ranks, your team's going to be in a good spot.
Yeah, I agree. And here's the thing. We lost something when we lost Sammy Watkins. When we didn't re-sign him and we didn't replace him, that hurt not just Kelce and Hill, but it hurt Hardman. It hurt everybody else. Because he was that extra threat that was on the field that got everybody else open. And we didn't replace him. We saw the hurt from that. And what we also found is that Tyreek will drop a lot of passes. He'll get injured. He was responsible for 3 interceptions last year. It went right through his hands and into somebody else's.
He was tied for the 3rd most in drops.
Yeah. And when you're, as good as he is, and no matter how anyone wants to spin it, I think he's the best threat wide receiver in the NFL. There's no doubt about it. But we have now given Hardman an opportunity to shine again like he did in 2019, because we now have more of a spread offense that we don't have to worry so much about the drops. We don't have to worry about, are we going to 1 or 2? Or now are we going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Who are we going to go to? Mahomes is going to have a lot more options. And I know a lot of people bash on D-Rob for his running backward situation, but he had some phenomenal catches when he was on the field as well. He tried to mimic. His biggest issue was his identity. In my opinion, he had an identity issue. He could not separate himself from being a Tyreek Hill or even a McCole Hardman or a Sammy Watkins. He wanted to be that guy that can, maybe run, make a spin move, take 2 steps back, and then gain 7 yards after the fact. He was not able to do that. He didn't have the speed. He didn't have the agility. He didn't have the hips. He's just not that guy. But if you put him out in the open field, he'll make some of the most acrobatic catches you'll ever see. Hopefully he does well. I don't want to any ill will against D-Rob, because he did what he had to do for us for a long time, and I like the man. I think he's been pretty humbled through this entire time of being that 3rd and 4th option as far as a wide receiver is concerned. But we've now evolved into a team that is going to be extremely hard to handle. If our defense is top 10, top 12, which I'm hoping it is with the moves we made, we're going to be a really hard team to beat this year. And I think they're going to gel very, very quickly. I think it's going to be a very quick, Mahomes has already worked out with them a lot. prior to anything. He's already had him down in Texas working out with them, and I think they're gonna adapt fairly quickly. I think even some of the rookies, remember we still have Cornell Powell that says he's ready to come back too.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
We got players. It's not like we don't have any options, and we just got rid of our best player and said, screw it, we're just going to sit. We didn't do that. Veach had a plan this whole entire time. And again, for everybody out there that thought that, I think it was Dove Kleiman or whatever his name is, spouted off, well, if Mahomes or if Veach continues to do this, he's going to lose Mahomes fairly quick. Mahomes already knew about this situation. He had this conversation with Kelsey and Mahomes, Veach did, and Andy, and what their plans were moving forward, and to help him get out of his complacency issue and the predictability that they were in. And they all came to an agreement that this is what should happen if he won't agree to a contract. And for everybody out there that didn't know, he did agree to a lot smaller contract at one point. He was at $22 million a year. And then the stakes went up a little bit, very little with the Kirk deal, but that really didn't sway anything. It was the Devontae Adams deal that swayed everything for Tyreek Hill. Kirk deal that everybody thinks that was the change of the whole economics when it came to wide receivers. It didn't. It made that team look very stupid for giving him that kind of money. And every other GM and owner laughed at them for doing that. But the Devontae Adams deal is what swayed him. And that's what changed the market for wide receivers.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you. It just kind of shows what kind of the deals that happen and what's brought about. But real quick, before we go on to our next topic, what is your guys' favorite Tyreek Hill moment or memory that you guys have had? I'll go and start with you, JP. What is your favorite Tyreek Hill moment or memory?
Man, I mean, there's so many of them. I think I have two, really. One is when he jumped up and grabbed the camera. That was phenomenal. But I think
that was a good one.
Catch, he caught a ball, about a 65-yard pass in double coverage. His vertical was insane, and he came down on his head. And I'll never forget that play because he came straight down on his head, and I thought, oh, shit, he probably just broke his neck. He jumped up, did a little dance, and ran off the field. And I thought that was probably the best catch I think I've ever seen in the NFL. And it didn't even affect him. I mean, he just got up, did his little dance, and moved on. But the camera thing had to have probably been the best for me. I mean, that was phenomenal. I don't know.
I agree with you, man. What do you think, Quentin? What's your probably favorite Tyreek Hill moment?
Well, he's got some pretty good punt returns, right? Him just standing back there looking like the human joystick. But I think it's got to be the Wasp moment in the Super Bowl, right? It's got to be, him going out and making that catch and adjusting his route to Patrick Mahomes. I think that because that moment will live in not just Chiefs history, but I think NFL history. The NFL always does those like throwback moments of Super Bowls on the NFL Network. And I think that moment defines that game, even though that wasn't the final play, that wasn't the final touchdown or anything like that. It was just sort of a moment in time, but that was so significant to that game and now to Chiefs franchise history, because that got the Chiefs offense over the hump and started the comeback in the Super Bowl. So I know it's kind of easy pickings, but I think if we didn't say the Wasp play, I think there'd be a lot of mad people.
Probably.
Yeah.
That you're not wrong, man.
Yeah.
The play I say is my favorite is probably the 4th and 9 game against the Ravens. The no look pass was also in that game from Mahomes, but that 4th and 9 play where Mahomes is really rolling to his right, rolling, just throw it down there. And Tyreek Hill, who has a heel injury, is limping all around the field, catches that pass, gets the first down, and gets even more yards. And for them to come back and win that game, but Tyreek Hill be the main reason why, even he had a heel injury, and so play phenomenal, was caught my number one moment. I was like, he's going to be special. So that's just my memory there. So
he's a special talent that will, look, nobody's ever going to be able to replace him. And here's, and the sad part is he's probably not going to look the same Tyreek Hill in Miami, and that's not because of him. It's because of the talent that's surrounding him. So unless they make some crazy move, but I think they've blown their wad when it comes to money right now. I think they spent like $200 million this year. So it sucks to see his stats will go down, And I think you're going to see a lot of short intermediate passes to him. And then, hopefully his yards after the catch will make up for that. But the one good thing that comes out of this is that I think that will be it'll be a huge help in that division to rival with like the New England Patriots defense and the Bills, even for that matter, because Miami always kind of had New England's number and they would beat them with Brady. They could be 1-9 and somehow beat Brady. But I think it's going to help that division a lot. If they can figure out a quarterback and a coaching staff that can help with the quarterbacks, they'll be in a pretty good spot. I like Tua. I think he's a good quarterback. I just don't think he's the quarterback that's going to be able to reach. Tyreek's going to have to slow down to catch up to get to his balls. Now, I'm not saying Tua's weak at all. Don't get me wrong. He's got a strong arm, but he's very inaccurate when he gets into those deep passes. And that is where Tyreek's going to probably fall off the bandwagon a little bit when it comes to that. So
I've got a question for you guys about Tyreek Hill. Do you think Tyreek Hill, let's say he doesn't have another 1,000-yard season, right, for however long he plays, he's somewhere between 750 and 999 yards. Do you think Tyreek Hill is a Hall of Fame wide receiver?
Yes.
I still say he is, because he put 1,000 yards consistently for a long period of time. And at this point, he's already won the Super Bowl. I mean, everything else is kind of just gravy at this point. The more yards he can get, he may not even get 1,000. But I think what we'll remember him for is being that elusive player that was shifty, that could get skinny, that get touchdowns on a quick notice, a moment's dime. We saw in the divisional round where he had those 2 touchdowns that were just phenomenal. The 13-second play. I mean, there were just many different things he's done. So I think based off his own
quarter, I mean,
yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think based on what he has with Mahomes in the Chiefs era, he's a Hall of Famer for sure. Now, can he elevate it possibly and make a better case for the Dolphins? Possibly. But I think depending on how it goes, he will still be considered as a Chief. And I would not be surprised if he retires as a Chief.
Yeah, I agree. I think he'll, barring any unforeseen issues, I'll put it that way, whether it be off the field or on the field, I think he's a Hall of Famer. So most guys that played, there's a lot of guys in the Hall of Fame that didn't have half his stats but had a Super Bowl and played for a long period of time are in the Hall of Fame. He definitely would deserve to be there, barring anything else that would hamper his ability to get there or reasoning behind getting there.
I got you. But hey, man, that was a great discussion about Tyreek Hill. The next part we're going to go into is going to be Orlando Brown. Mm-hmm. So we know he was sitting out of OTAs for a little bit, and he's still sitting out, but he finally signed an agent. And it's reported that he wants to be the highest paid left tackle. If you're the Chiefs, would you do this, or kind of what are your thoughts? What would you do if you were Veach?
I think, this is sort of a similar conversation that we kind of just had about the Tyreek Hill. When you have a superstar quarterback who is getting paid top money, especially in today's NFL economy, where quarterbacks are getting paid so much more than even the other top players at their position, it's really hard to have so many players that are paid at the top of their position. There's just not enough money to go around. It doesn't bother me that Orlando Brown is not participating in OTAs. They're not mandatory there. That doesn't bother me. In fact, it's probably better because you get some of the younger guys to play the left tackle position, and, maybe guys that normally play, maybe you get your guys that play guard to see if they can play left tackle. So if somebody gets injured or you have a breakdown of your offensive line, like we did a couple years ago, you have guys that at least have some reps at that position. So it doesn't bother me that he's, not at the camp right now, that he's not at OTAs. That's his decision, especially since he's not even a part of the team. Even if he was signed and he didn't show up, it doesn't bother me. making him the top paid left tackle. I just don't see how that's happening. I don't see how you can make that money work unless you just basically move Patrick Mahomes' contract money again and give that all to Orlando Brown. Other than that, I don't see how you could really make the money work while trying to invest in the defense that you're basically just going to keep rebuilding every year.
Yeah. The one thing about Mahomes' contract is I think there's a lot of misconception about his contract. His contract his entire contract is bonus structured. So for any given moment or any given year, they can transfer his contract to a bonus structure and he will meet that bonus. So he's going to get paid either way. The difference is it doesn't affect the cap. So that comes directly out of Clark Hunt's pocket. So if it's a bonus structure deal, Clark is writing him a check instead of it coming out of the cap, which not too many teams can actually pull off. If you don't have somebody like a Mahomes, you're not going to get that done. It's just not going to happen. That's why you're not seeing the Ravens jump all over Lamar Jackson right now and getting him to sign a contract, or extending. But the protection, I think, for Mahomes is there with or without him. Don't get me wrong. I like Orlando Brown. I thought it was a great move. I still think it's a great move. I don't know that he will get that from any team at this point to be the highest paid left tackle in the league. I think Trent Williams holds that right now. Am I not wrong? Is it Trent Williams that holds
Yes.
that?
Yeah, because it was a couple when he used that when we were looking to rebuild our offensive line, we were looking to sign Trent Williams, and he basically used our contract negotiations to the 49ers to get his contract bumped up. He was using our contract negotiation as leverage, and that's how he ended up with that contract.
Oh, believe me, I know. I got a call at 12:30 saying that he was pen to paper, and then I said, "Can I put it out?" And they said, "Well, let him sign first. It's almost done. Give it 5 minutes." And 5 minutes later, they called and said San Francisco just bumped it, and he went back. So, I think when you're looking at it, and I guess if you're looking at it in the perspective of age and then contracts, it would be hard pressed to say, okay, I got a 25-year-old that's just as good, and he's worth what he's asking for. It's hard pressed not to give it to him when you got somebody that gelled very well, especially towards midway through the season, and the offensive line came in like second in the league, maybe even first. I don't know, in some perspectives or some metrics, but it's really it's a hard situation. He would have to do it on a bonus structure deal. If it was me, I would do it on some type of, part of his, it could be 50% of his contract's bonus structure. That way, if he doesn't meet every bit of the criteria, then he doesn't make it. And it would have to be backloaded to a degree.
So I have a question for you guys. Sorry, JP, I don't mean to interrupt you. But how would a bonus structure work for offensive lineman? I mean, he's not really catching touchdowns. This is more like health and games played or pressure percentages.
I think it would almost have to be like not giving up sacks, not allowing a certain amount of pressures, things of that nature, to be able to bonus structure him. It's going to be a difficult thing to do. That would probably be the only way you could do it.
There could be team-based incentives too.
Yeah.
So if you're on if you're Orlando Brown and the Chiefs, and you say, hey, if the Chiefs win 8 games, you get this huge, bonus. So you're basically guaranteeing it to him, because obviously the Chiefs are going to win 8 games as long as Patrick Mahomes is on this, roster. Mm-hmm. So you could say that could be one of them, is you could make them team-based incentives.
Yeah, like a pool system to where it's, but basically for him.
Yeah.
It's hard. I think he deserves it. He's a good player. I think he was a better right tackle than he is a left tackle at this point, but I think he's acclimating very well. And it's just hard to watch. I don't want to see us bring in somebody new that doesn't have the continuity yet, and then Mahomes feel the pressure from it, especially with this new offense that we put together. It's just a hard you know, it's a give and take, but it's a hard situation because you don't really want to see Mahomes have any pressure any more than he needs to have or you know, should have. And if you bring somebody new in, that may be a detriment. So you just don't know yet. I mean, at one point it was never even a thought for him to be the highest paid, and then all of a sudden he wanted to be. So I think that just kind of goes with what, you know, other people are doing in the market. And right now, offensive linemen and, you know, wide receivers are the top of the crop right now. And then next year, the year after, it'll be a different position. So I think the only position you're going to see that's never going to be especially in this new era of air attack game, is the running back. It's always going to be the same money, other than the worst contract ever with Elliott. But I mean, who gives a running back $90 million a year, or a $90 million contract? That's freaking insane. But Jerry Jones does. It's really the only person that ever would. And he's not produced anything near that kind of money ever since he's gotten that contract. He's done nothing but get himself in trouble, and he's not played up to his potential. So it's always going to be a revolving situation when it comes to the market. One player can change a position's value so quickly. It could be cornerbacks next year. It could be safeties. It could be whole different position, you know, that changes the market on what you're going to pay somebody. So,
and the thing about offensive line is that it's so unique compared to every other part about football, is that you're only as good as your weakest link. And there's no other position group that's like that. Correct. Because you can have 4 all-pro linemen, and then your right tackle, you know, is a guy that you just picked up off the street, and you would have your offensive line would be exploited because all you do is you put your best pass rusher against that right tackle, and you know you're really limited as an offense. Yeah. So there's no other position like that. You know, you can have a bad wide receiver group, but one stud, and you know your wide receiver group can still get touchdowns and yards. Look at Megatron's, you know, all of his career up in Detroit, and to prove that, or Devontae Adams last year with the Packers. So it's so unique. You don't want to lose a really good tackle, a guy that you could argue is a top 5 left tackle in the league. And just to try and replace him, it's doable, but you know, it's just not, you don't want to put yourself in that situation if you don't have to.
No, definitely not.
Well, because
a quick one here, really quick. I don't mean to cut you off. By the way, interesting stat about Devontae Adams and the Packers. They went 7-0 without him on the field, and their average points were 33 points a game. That was during his tenure with the Packers. He was out 7 games. They went 7-0, and they scored 33.3 points a game, if I'm not mistaken, without him on the field. So I just wanted to throw that out there because it's one of those things that we found out, and I think that's what helped Veach make that decision with Tyreek Hill, is that we put up a lot of points without Kelsey and Tyreek on the hill.
Some games they were scoring high 30s, pushing 40s. I mean, a couple times last season. So I mean, it's doable.
It's doable.
It really is doable.
Him. So, and we did it with guys that weren't bigger name wide receivers. I mean, we had Pringle, we had Hardman, we had, D-Rob, and really it's about it. But it's just one of those things to where you don't have to have a Devontae Adams to be successful. And the Green Bay did prove that with that stat. I mean, we've proved it with our numbers that we put up without Tyreek and Kelsey on the field at the exact same time. So it's one of those things I wanted to throw out there. But go ahead, Caleb.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with all the points you said there, man. I mean, Quinn brings a great point. It is a unique position. And to see kind of how it comes together in the day, I think he will be back here. I mean, he's a phenomenal left tackle. I don't see him going anywhere. And we don't want to see what we saw Mahomes had to do early last year. Getting hit, throwing balls in the dirt. I mean, we don't want to see that ever happen again. So I think the Chiefs are in a good spot. I think he wants to be here. He sees we're a team that can at least will make it to the AFC Championship game or the Super Bowl every year. And I think kind of the statement with the group he signed with, he's like, at this point in my life, I kind of want to basically make sure I am taken care of. But he also wants to make sure his career goes well. So I'm hoping for all the best there.
Yeah.
So, but what are you guys' thoughts overall on OTA so far? Because we've seen a lot of great things. There's been a lot of talk. I mean, Justin Ross is kind of one of the best undrafted free agent wide receivers that could be here. Just kind of, what are you guys' overall thoughts of it?
I think it's interesting that Justin Ross is getting more hype than Skylar Moore, who we actually, or Sky Moore, excuse me, who we actually drafted. I don't remember. I've been following the Chiefs for, all of my life, as far as I can remember. And I don't remember a time in not only Chiefs history, but in the NFL where an undrafted free agent gets more hype than the position player that you drafted with a high draft pick. Sky Moore was a second round pick. It's not like he was picked up in the 7th and they're basically the same draft pick. I mean, this is a guy that was coming out and some people were talking how he was going to be drafted with a late first round pick. And yet this guy who's an undrafted free agent is getting more hype, even from the Chiefs media team who, put that video of him out, with that just fantastic one-handed grab, which was just cool to see.
That's hunger. I mean, we've talked about this for so long. And as many years as I spent around that team, it's hunger. And when you got a guy that's undrafted that should have went, like you said, I mean, he should have been a first, second round pick and ends up going undrafted. He's got a lot to prove. And he was good enough to be in that talk of a first, second round draft pick. It just didn't happen. And I think Sky Moore is inevitably one of the best with the draft picks that we got. I was so excited when we drafted him. We actually had we were doing a spaces during that, and who was it, man, that we had on? Was it Mark Gunnels?
Yeah, Mark Gunnels.
Yeah, and him and I both were going back and forth because we both wanted Sky Moore. I mean, we both wanted him on the field. He was that guy that we thought was going to be a huge help to the team and a great fit, and he still will be. But I think Ross has just got a lot to prove, and he was already a phenomenal player. So we've had a lot of that with the Chiefs. It's weird, but we've had a lot of that with the Chiefs. Veach has always gone after those late round picks or the undrafted guys that have turned out to be phenomenal ball players and have all the hype and all the talk. And it just, I mean, look at who was it we picked up in the 6th round last year? That offensive lineman, I can why his name's Trey Smith. Wasn't he a 6th round?
Yep, 6th round pick because they said
because he was the one that had like blood clots.
Yeah, 3 years prior. But yeah, and look how great he turned out to be. I mean, it's insane to think that Veach has got so much talent in drafting that he can find those guys and pick them up, and they end up being day one starters. And not only day one starters, but being phenomenal players. And that's something that we have struggled with for years as far as scouting is concerned. And most teams still struggle with it. They have, they can draft 5 guys and have 4 misses. And we haven't had that problem in the Veach regime so far. So I don't know, man. It's really not that surprising to me. I think he's just one of those very talented, high football IQ guys that has a lot to prove, and he's proving it. And I think he's going to make the 53 man. I really do. I think he's going to make the roster.
Yeah, I think he's going to make the roster. When it comes to the wide receiver room, generally speaking, Andy Reid, throughout his career, has kept 6 wide receivers. And I know Caleb went on a rant about this a couple weeks ago about having guys that play special teams.
Yep.
But your 5th and 6th wide receivers, are important special teams guys. So the only thing that I could see holding him back is if he isn't able to, play on special teams. But I think that there's a chance his talent, can, override that. I mean, the guy's 6'4", runs 4.22 40 time. I mean, he was projected as a freshman. And what was it, against Alabama?
Yeah,
he was blowing up
him.
Alabama. Yeah. And everybody was like, look at this guy. He's a potential 1st round pick. And then he has that injury. that really set him back. Wasn't it? It was something. It was like was it a spine?
It's a spinal thing where his bones are like fused.
Yeah, they like fused together.
Something weird like that.
Something. It was some abstract thing. And it's just and back and spine and neck surgeries or injuries. Those really scare teams away in all sports, right?
Yeah.
That's not a football thing, even though football's a contact sport. If a guy has a neck injury in baseball, you're really going to try and keep away from that if you can. That's just it's a traumatic, injury to go through. Now, I am pretty sure that there was a Houston running back a few years ago that had a similar problem, and he came back and played fine after coming back from surgery, having a similar having the similar surgery to that. So
yeah,
I don't think it's going to hold him back, but I definitely see why he was undrafted because of that. It's just, especially when you read that there were like 20 some odd teams, doctors who didn't clear him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting though too, because the potential is there. And the whole thing when it comes about at the end of the day, if they can get him on this roster and if he can do the special teams for a little bit and if he can play, I mean, it's going to be very beneficial to this team because it's just another weapon. The wide receiver room is already loaded. It's only going to get better with him there and the guy like Sky Moore. And the reason why I'm so against the quote-unquote special teams factors sometimes is because you have these guys that are great and they're just sitting there. Prime example, and we'll get to it later with the defense, but you guys had guys like Sorensen and then also Neiman that were taking plays away when you had guys like Willie Gay, Armani Watts, but more specifically Dorian Daniel. Dorian Daniel and Armani Watts literally should have got more snaps to play, and they were on the bench playing special teams. I really believe, personally, that if Armani Watts would have got some significant snaps over the last couple seasons, he would have had issues in that Buffalo game. He would have been turned around. But when you could put guys like Sorensen out there and let them kind of do their thing, and they continue to fail assignments week after week after week, I feel like it's incompetence on the organization when they don't want to make the moves.
Yeah.
Quentin, you saw this, and I know you're probably livid. Were you mad when Jamar Chase did his whole thing and ran around the field 3 times and lit off fireworks in the end zone? Were you mad when he did that?
I'm still upset. How do you blitz on 3rd and 20?
And see, and I'll get that in later with Spags, but my point is that you have these guys you're investing in. Now, I know those guys were from Beach's first draft, but oh my goodness. I feel like Dorian Daniel could have done something. Could have been a 3rd down linebacker that could be able to stop the running back. He may not have like the tackling power, but he's going to be able to break up a pass. But that's all I want to say there. We'll get into more of that later. But I just feel like these guys should have an opportunity. You drafted these guys. They shouldn't just be special teamers the entire time. They should get some snaps, especially in some of these meaningful games that aren't as big, because sometimes you might need them in a pinch.
Yeah, you might need them in a clutch situation that if you don't have them, and they're not prepared, what good are they? So
yeah, I think there are solutions to that that go farther than just than not having guys on your team that are just for special teams. I think part of that, one, just in general with the added game onto the schedule, I think the 53-man roster needs to be expanded.
Yep.
Even if it's just a 55-man roster, you get a couple extra guys there who, because you've got like your corner room just has to be so deep because, you're playing with potentially, 3 on the field at once. And once you get past, for some teams, once you get past your first 2, you're in garbage town.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to be able to have extra, players on there. I also think that some people don't know that in the NFL, you have a limited amount of people who can dress your game day roster. Right now, only 47 or 48.
48.
I think it's 48. 48 players can dress on game day. That to me just needs to go away. If you have a guy on the 53-man roster, he should be able to play on game day.
Yeah.
So by having, by changing those rules, I think you will allow more players to get on the field and you wouldn't run into that many issues because you're giving guys more experience by just having them, be able to come in. So I think part of that problem, Caleb, I think is just the fact that the Chiefs were limited on how many people could dress up on a game day.
And that's really a shitty situation because, you get into a position where if you lose 2 or 3 players, which we've seen this happen numerous times where we've, not just us, but other teams have lost in the same position, lost 2 or 3 guys in the same game. And then what? You got nobody to fill that spot. So, to get to your point, it was supposed to go to a 55-man roster when the 17 game schedule came out. It was supposed to go to a 55-man roster. They stopped it because of COVID, and they still haven't implemented it yet. From what I'm understanding, that may happen by 2020, the end of 2023 season, or the beginning of 2023. It may go to a 55-man roster at that point. But
so
it's going to have to at some point.
So is there at the point where I know they have inactives? Should they, and I kind of see what you're saying, Quentin, let everyone dress. Shouldn't the Chiefs just basically, you're saying just get rid of it and like, okay, if you need to be inactive, you're inactive, but everyone's dressing. Is that kind of where you're getting at?
If you are on the 53-man roster, you should be able to play on game day. Yeah. There shouldn't be this like next bureaucratic level of like, you're on the 53-man roster, but only 48 of you can play in a game.
Exactly.
Like this sort of excluding 6 players just seems, it seems like you're on the playground and you're trying to pick teams, and there's 6 people unathletic people left to play soccer, and both of you are just like, I don't want any of these guys. So you're just like, you're on the roster. Yeah, but we're going to shove you to the sideline.
Yeah, you go sit on the swing while we.
Yeah, exactly. It's 100% right.
Yep, I know exactly what you mean. But I think they're gonna, they are doing some real changes, as we speak, actually, and there's going to be some more coming out in the next year, and I believe the 55-man roster is going to be part of it, and I think they will change that rule as well, because there's no point in having a 53-man roster if all 53 can't play. That's just, that's why you have 6 inactives every freaking week. And to me, it's just kind of ignorant. A lot of guys attributed that to, scheme and position and who you were playing and things of that nature, which, that determines who you're going to have inactive, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the reason why. The reason why is because you can only dress out 48. Mm-hmm. So you have to bring out, you have to sit there and go, okay, well, I know this guy is going to be better against this guy, but this guy has more experience. He's higher on the depth chart. So which way do we go with this? It's kind of stupid. And if God forbid we lose 2 or 3 players in the same position group, what do we do then?
Exactly. Yeah, in a game, you can't do anything. And I think that's something, JP, we'll have to look into probably talking about more in the future, getting one of our writers to possibly write about, because that's a great point. Yeah. I have not thought of that before at all. Would you guys think also maybe the practice squad needs to be expanded upon? So maybe a 7v7 league for each team, so we can have players pull from that as well? I mean, I know we're getting the baseball complex, but I mean, what do you guys think about that?
I've got some ideas on what they could do with the practice squad if we want to go down that rabbit hole.
Hey, go ahead.
I think it was good, the change last year with the adding extra players on the similar to my to fan roster, is that you're adding another game. More people are going to get injured. That's just like statistics. Mm-hmm. You add another game where large men can smash into other large men. More people are going to get hurt. So expanding the roster, I think, is good. I think you should be able to keep older, like veterans, on the practice squad, and I think they changed that for COVID.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You were allowed to keep a couple of veterans on your practice squad. I feel like you should be able to keep whoever you want on your practice squad. Age shouldn't matter. So just open that up for teams to be able to do, and I think that would really help, especially with development. Guys who have a lot of athletic ability, but just really struggle with catching on to a scheme. So to take it back to a wide receiver conversation, the Andy Reid scheme is very difficult for rookie wide receivers to catch up on.
Yep.
The only guy
difficult for vets sometimes. So
yeah. We've heard players come on and during their first press conference and just talk about how thick the Andy Reid book is. It's like a dictionary.
No,
it's a Stephen King novel, as JP calls it.
I call it a Stephen King novel because that's what it is, and it changes daily. So that's a difficult thing to learn. I mean,
so to be able to have extra guys to sit down and try and figure it out as veterans, I think you're going to help extend the careers of some guys. I think the only rookie who under the Andy Reid system, wide receiver who's come in and gotten 1,000 yards is Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah.
And he was, I mean, he had amazing athleticism, and that helped him get to the 1,000 yards, the 1,000 yard mark. So that right there should just tell you enough. And he's had some really good wide receivers under his belt as rookies.
That's true.
So that right there should explain it all. You need to be able to have guys on your practice squad that are veterans. Especially you think like Josh Gordon would be a great example of that. Personally, I don't think Josh Gordon's going to make the 53-man roster. I think we've got our 4 guys that are locked in the wide receiver group, and then 2 of those rookie guys or those young guys are going to make it because of their athleticism. I just don't think there's enough room on this roster for Josh Gordon, and he would be a perfect guy to be able to shove away on your practice squad and keep him around for the season. So when inevitably somebody gets hurt, he would be a veteran you could call up and put him in for a couple of games because he would be able to know the system.
Well, the one thing that I would say about Josh is I've got mixed feelings about him. I think he might make the 53 because he's now had a year under his belt. He's got the longevity in the system, and with the complexity of Andy Reid's playbook, there may be a couple of rookies that just don't get it, similar to a Cornell Powell. And I agree with you. I do believe, though, that we can keep him on the practice squad because he was out of the league completely and then came back in midway through, last year. Well, not midway, but a quarter way through last year. And I believe that he may be able to stay on I'll have to look into it, but I think he might be able to stay on the practice squad for this upcoming season. We'll have to see. And I'd like to look into that and find out, but I don't know, man. I got a feeling that, he might be that guy that everybody, I got high hopes for him. I really do. I really want him to succeed. And I would love to see Mahomes, last year he got targeted 14 times. He had 5 receptions and a touchdown 14 times in an entire season. Well, from week 4 on. And that wasn't necessarily his fault, especially from a coaching standpoint. It wasn't Andy's fault, but it takes a lot to learn our system. And as high as his football IQ is, he was still out of the league for a year and a half, almost 2 years. So he's got a lot of football left in him. He's a 31-year-old with a 28-year-old body.
Yeah.
So I would love to see him succeed and make this roster and just blow it up, just to stick it up everybody's ass that keeps slamming him, because I think there's a lot of guys out there that just ripped him apart for no reason.
I mean, he got the NFL drug policy is so just arbitrary. I mean, we heard Pat McAfee talk. He got stuck on the NFL's carousel of the drug policy when he played for Indianapolis, and hearing his personal story about it, explaining what everything you have to go through, it sounds like a nightmare. And so for somebody to get suspended over something they did on their own personal time, and that is now in a lot of states legalized, it's ridiculous.
Well, they don't even test for it in the NFL anymore. So
yeah, then that's good. My thing is I just don't see how the numbers would work out for him to make the roster, because I figure 6 wide receivers. You've got Mecole, Sky Moore, Juju, Marquez, Valdez-Scantling, and if we're going to go with Justin Ross to make the 53, then you've only got one more spot, and you've got people like Marcus Kemp and Doris Fountain, guys who have played special teams. And unlike the Packers, we actually care about our special teams. So, we dedicate roster spots to guys that are like that. So can you see Josh Gordon playing special teams, running down kickoffs or punts or anything like that? I'm not sure, because there's guys like Cornell Powell and Marcus Kemp and Doris Fountain who could take up that last wide receiver spot.
Yeah,
maybe they'll expand it. I mean, maybe what the Chiefs will do, maybe take 7 receivers. Maybe they. I don't know,
because then you got to take that away from somewhere else. So do you cut a corner where you invested a lot into all those draft picks? True. So you're more likely to keep an extra corner on the roster because you drafted those guys instead of some of these wide receivers who have been sitting on the bench for a couple of years.
Or it's probably best just to stuff them on the practice squad. Probably.
Yeah, or you could actually pull a running back if you wanted to. I mean, if you really thought about it in this type of, if you're looking for a position that you could pull somebody from, it'd be a running back, just because they're not as needed in most instances, especially with our team, as a wide receiver or a corner is needed. So I don't know. I mean, it's just
Mhm.
it's a tough situation.
Oh,
Yeah,
it is.
that'll be a conversation when camp comes around too. Training camp comes around, and we see who's making impact on the field there, because there's a lot of guys. I mean, this roster has a lot of really good young back end talent. And so the number game that Veach and the front office is going to have to pay. I would not want to be in that room when you've got to start throwing names off the board to let them walk.
That's gonna suck. I mean, it's sucked for Veach for the last 4 years because we've had a lot of good people walk, and especially last year and really year before too. But it's going to be hard. I would not want to be. I'd like to be a fly on the wall.
Oh, absolutely.
I definitely wouldn't want to be the guy telling these, sorry, man, you didn't make it.
Especially when a lot of these guys are, I mean, we've heard a lot of really good things about some of these wide receivers over the past couple years. Darius Fountain, there are some guys have come to bat for him in press conferences talking about him. Andy Reid's talked about Cornell Powell in the past. And so there's there's these guys that have been sitting on the roster that have played special teams. Marcus Kemp has made some good tackles on kickoffs and punts.
Yeah.
So just try and that's where the when people talk about the roster and those final roster spots, special teams plays such an important factor in whether or not you're going to make the roster, because the Kansas City Chiefs think of football as a three-part game: offense, defense, and special teams.
Yeah, it's all three phases. It's not just, offense and defense. They truly believe in all three phases.
Yeah.
And we have a different special teams mindset than most teams do.
Cough, Packers.
Yeah, exactly.
You love taking digs at the Packers, man.
I just get tired of people talking about how they own their team. It's like, no,
I don't blame you.
Yeah. It's just weird because it's, again, we have a special teams coach that doesn't wear a headset, has no communication with any other coach. He's his own guy. He's got his own group of guys. He does his own thing. And it's strange how it works out, because usually, again, almost every instance, if your quarterback or your head coach goes down, your special teams coach is the guy that steps in. And we don't have that situation because he has really has no desire to be a head coach, or he would have been one a long time ago. He's been offered that position a few times, but he doesn't have the desire to have that pressure. He likes what he does. So it's strange.
Isn't Dave Tobe like a head coach or something like that?
What's that now?
I think he is.
Because I think they were worried about somebody stealing him, and so we gave him a promotion to be like assistant head coach and special teams coordinator.
Yeah, he's got the title for that. Matt Nagy actually has that title as well now. He's an assistant to the head coach as well. So I
think kind of, yeah. Go ahead. Finish what you're saying.
No, I think Matt Nagy took a lot of that as well. So, but yeah, that Tobe was offered.
So I think kind of what he's trying to say in that sense is, when it comes to that position, you got to promote your guys from within. And when you have a guy like him, it's very important to keep Tobe, because if you don't have him, he can go to another team. So Quinn, I think I forgot what grade we were in, we saw that Tobe was possibly going to go to the Colts. You remember that?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's different things like that could possibly happen, but to keep him there, I mean, that's kind of what you need at the end of the day. JP, you back?
Yeah, I believe I am.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. I think I had a little glitch in my.
You're good, man.
In my computer there, but yeah, Tobe is just one of those guys that you don't want to lose, and
no,
I think he's probably the best special teams coach in the NFL, and he has had offers, and we did elevate his position, I should say. But again, Matt Nagy kind of took over some of that role as well this year. But Tobe is happy with what he's doing. So he loves special teams. He loves developing players. And that's what he's good at. So,
yeah.
But anyway, it's going to be an interesting season. It's going to be a very interesting season, actually. We got one more topic, I think that was
our last topic What are the Chiefs going to do with their defensive line? Quinn, I know we talked about a little bit. JP, we've talked a lot about what is going to happen, because I'm kind of a little worried about Spagnuolo after what I've seen with his defense as of last year. Quentin, what are your thoughts overall as the defense as a whole, specifically defensive line?
Okay, so one, I think it's important to talk about just how young this room is, right? Both defense, when we're talking defensive line, I'm going to talk defensive ends and defensive tackles. So the line as a whole. The only two players on this roster that have more than 4 years of experience on the defensive line is Frank Clark and Chris Jones. Everybody else on this line has 4 or less years of NFL experience. So there's just not a lot of veterans, really who've played a lot of time in this, not only in this system, but just in the league in general. Like there are guys like Colin Saunders who has 4 years of experience, and he's been on this team his entire career, but there's not a lot of a really big superpower veteran presence. And I don't know, I'm not in the room or anything, but it's hard to see that players would really look up to Frank Clark as the way he used to play. When he was in Seattle, and he was a really dominant defensive lineman. And even during the playoff run, he really showed, what he's capable of. But he's sort of lost that. And so the only guy really on the roster who's got that like superstar defensive line play is Chris Jones. And he plays a position that personally, I love the defensive tackles. I love watching the nose tackles, players like Aaron Donald and when Fletcher Cox was playing, and that's in the Super Bowl, the run that he went on. I love watching those big defensive tackles put pressure on it. It's something that doesn't happen that often. So it's nice to see it actually happen. But I'm kind of worried, where we're going to get significant pass rush from this team. Karlaftis is exciting to see. I really like that pick. I know there was a lot of talking heads that didn't like Karlaftis coming on to Kansas City, but I think it was a great value pick, but also just a position of need. I thought the Chiefs were going to invest more during the draft into the defensive end. I was surprised to see that many corners get drafted over defensive tackles. But you don't just draft for need, you draft for the players that are available. I understand that. So I don't really know where we're going to get a lot of pass rush. I think the question comes into how much and how do you blitz? The Chiefs rebuilt this defensive end, or the defensive backfield. And I think that tells me that Spags is going to use linebackers and slot corners like Snead to blitz around the edge. And I think that's how we're going to have to manufacture pass rush. And we're not really going to get it from the guys on the line.
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I do too. I think they're going to have to, they need to fill, really, Chris Jones needs some help. I think Frank Clark we're going to see a resurgence of Frank Clark this year.
I hope so.
Well, last year he had more than one issue. And it wasn't just the stupid off-field shit that really didn't even make sense to me to a degree. But over the past 2 years, people, and I'm not going to speak on what his issue is, but he does have an ongoing issue. I said this on the show before, and we talked about it before anybody else did on this show, on any outlet. He's got a stomach issue that is never going to go away. So, yeah. That's something that people have to realize. He's played through a lot of pain. Even in the Super Bowl run, when he was dominant as hell, he was playing through a lot of pain. And what he has is not something that is lightly taken, or most people wouldn't be able to walk, much less get out on a football field and play. So, and especially at his position. Now, he did lose a little bit of his motivation last year, but he's gained that back. And I think he's going to be a lot more dominant than people give him credit for this year. He knows that he would have a really hard time getting signed anywhere else for the money that he's even getting now from the Chiefs. And I think he's really going to push to play that position to the best of his ability, because I believe he knows in his heart of hearts that this is probably going to be his last year with the Chiefs, even though, he's got 2 years left. that last year's an out year for the Chiefs. So I think it's going to be a good year for him. We need somebody on the other side, and we need some help for Chris. And I think Karlaftis is a beast. I don't know why anybody, you hit the nail on the head, the talking heads. Sometimes they talk out of the other end, but I think he was one of the best picks that we picked up out of the draft. I mean, that guy he's got so much potential and so much drive. He's an animal. I don't know how anybody would ever think that for 1 second he's not going to be a force in this league, because he's going to be, and he's going to be a scary force. So we pick up a couple pieces on the defensive line, and we'll be okay. And we got some money to do it with, so we should be all right.
So my last
one thing, and then I'll let you go. I didn't want it to make it sound like I was just like praying all over Frank Clark. That trade to get Frank Clark here in Kansas City, I'll defend it, even though it was expensive, and the contract that got signed afterward made it, look even worse. But Frank Clark helped this team get a Super Bowl, and he helped us get to another Super Bowl. He's helped this team get to 4 AFC championship games. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm hating on Frank Clark. I'm not like a Frank Clark hater or anything, but I just think that at a certain point, you do have to look at his production and see what he's done in the past. But, I still will defend Veach when people call him out for making that trade for Frank Clark. So I just wanted to say that. I don't want
no, and I didn't think you were. I was mainly talking about most of Twitter that just have been.
Yeah, I was also speaking to the Twitter sphere there.
Yeah. It seems like they tend to
they know more than everyone else.
Yeah, they know it.
Right.
I mean, they're all they're all GMs and they're all head coaches somehow. I don't know how they've all done it from the couch, but they've done it. But yeah, it's a weird situation when it comes to Twitter. That's why sometimes it's just best to ignore them, because we have one guy that follows us that has said numerous times, get rid of the entire coaching staff. But I mean, every time, it doesn't matter. If we have one position that plays badly, one guy that plays badly, the whole team needs to be fired. Everybody
sounds like he's a Raiders fan.
No,
he probably is.
He's a Chiefs fan. He's been a Chiefs fan for a long time. I think he's just a very angry individual. He's just got he's got a lot of internal issues that he needs to get worked out. But I don't think I've ever seen him say a positive thing about the Chiefs, even with the Super Bowl. Well, somebody could have done better. I mean, we just won the freaking Super Bowl, and we had a run that nobody else has ever had in the history of the playoffs. Yeah, let's find something negative to talk about, but that's just Twitter, and that's just part of it. They take their frustrations and their life hate out on social media and on the players that they could never be in that position.
Yeah. But real quick before we go, would you guys like to have Ndamukong Suh on this roster? And if you had on the defensive line, how would it make you guys feel? Do you think it would help and we really won't need edge? Because I think having Suh and Chris Jones in the middle, I mean, that's good options.
He wouldn't step on Patrick I don't know if you want, when it comes to a big personality guy like Ndamukong Suh, you have to make sure it fits in this roster wise. So, this isn't Madden. You can't just go and get. So I think that would, make me hesitant, to say the least, just about the kind of guy, you're bringing in. Because Ndamukong Suh is a notorious dirty player, right? Yeah. I mean, that's just a fact. That he's played dirty in the past. So that would kind of worry me a little bit, just by the kind of personality you're bringing in. I know that if you hypothetically, if the Chiefs were to bring in Ndamukong Suh or somebody like him, that's a kind of guy that you would like to see him have limited snaps on the field, just so his production carries the entire year. He's been a workhorse for his entire career. He's just eaten up snaps. And so as he gets older, I think that if you were to bring him in, he would be like a rotational piece. I think the only way this team adds depth to the defensive line room is during roster cut down. And somebody will, take a guy either like the day before roster cut down, Veach send a 7th-round pick to S team and to guarantee getting somebody, or somebody will get cut and that he really likes that at one point Veach wanted to draft or to pick up and be part of the room. I think this defensive line is going to be very rotational heavy, which isn't necessarily a bad thing or a detriment to the team. I just think that that's the way this team is going to run, is that you're going to have a lot of heavy rotational pieces coming in.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's going to be, and that's what we need. Where we've always been lackluster on depth, and a lot of times we've seen what's happened when certain players step in and they're not really prepared. Cam Irving, it just
you're not wrong.
Yeah,
no, you're not.
It just kind of falls apart, and we don't need that. That's why he's been going so heavy on depth and getting in the stars that he needs to get in. So getting in the players that fill those positions in need and get that depth built where anybody can step in at any given moment and fill the shoes. And that's what we really need. And I think we're going to have that. I really do. I think we're going to have that this year, barring any mistakes, with the defensive line signings or fixing, I guess I should say, finishing out the defensive line. We should be okay. So.
Well, I agree with both of you guys. Hey, if we could add him, I'll be very, very happy. I mean, have a guy like that on this team would help. I do agree with Quentin there too. You don't know if he's going to cause some penalties or whatnot. If he can get with this defensive group, hey, I'd be happy. If not, no big deal. But I have a feeling the Chiefs will make a move there before the season ends. So, before the season starts up.
Yeah, I agree. If not by then, at least by those last roster or those last cuts, at the end of September. We'll see something happen because you got a lot of guys that are going to be on the street come the end of training camp and things like that. So, other than that, I don't know. I think we've covered everything. What about you?
I think we covered everything. Yeah.
Well, man.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything else. Besides, the only thing left is that whatever's going on with Lamar Jackson, and I think he's going the Kirk Cousins route, where he's gonna try and maximize his contract, whether it's with Baltimore or not. I don't see him signing. It's gonna be
with Baltimore.
I don't know. He seems to have some bad blood with the team, but I'm not sure where it came from, because it's not like we can point to a press conference or a moment in the year and say that was the moment. So that's something I want to keep my eye on, just because Baltimore is a very good team in a very competitive division and conference. And so if something happens with Baltimore and Lamar Jackson, doesn't want to play with them anymore, hey, you know what? There's a lot of open seats in the NFC. See you later.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
His biggest problem, I can tell you right now from everybody I've talked to, and I told Caleb this on the last show, is communication. He had absolutely no communication on any of the cuts or trades that went on. He found out on Twitter, and that pisses him off. And I don't blame him. It would piss me off too. When you're the leader of the team and you're not even consulted, one of your best receivers is getting shipped out, or it may not be the best in the league, but best for you is getting shipped out without you knowing about it. It's just wrong.
Yeah, that could have been the straw that broke the camel's back, but I feel like for that to happen, there had to be other straw put on said camel's back. There had to be other things building up to that moment, and I just can't see like that. They're like that defining those things that happened, because this team has went out of their way to build an offense around a very special talent, and a talent that other teams. Lamar Jackson is unique in his running ability, and that's not a very popular way to build an offense. So for them to build the offense around him and support him in the way they had, it's not very clear to me, what's been going on in Baltimore.
Well, I think when you're signing players for mega contracts and then you're still not signed, and you're getting rid of players that, are really detrimental, it's a detriment to your game without you knowing about it or even being consulted. That's been leading up to a lot of this, and I think you're going to end up seeing him go somewhere else. I think if they wanted to sign him, they would have already extended him. So, I just think it's a parting of I think you're going to see a parting pretty soon.
Yeah. It's also important to keep in mind that he doesn't have an agent, which
He does. His mom. His mom's his agent.
Okay. Yeah.
But
sorry, Lamar Jackson's mom.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're a great person,
Yeah.
but I don't know if you're qualified to deal with a NFL contract.
definitely not. And I think, that's part of the reason why they've kind of taken advantage of him, because they really don't have anybody. He doesn't have any advocate in his corner. I mean, he's got his mom, but yeah, what's you gonna do? Go in there and say, "I'll smack the shit out of you"? I mean,
Well, and also,
don't mess with my son.
What's important about having an agent, it separates you from the negotiations. So you're able to still, you sort of separate that. So you as a player are not getting in bad blood with the front office. You as the player are able to keep doing what you're doing on the field. And anybody that gets upset in the front office, they're upset with the agent and not the player. There's that separation there. And if you don't have an agent, not only can the team take advantage of you, but then you're sort of getting bad blood within the whole organization. So I think that's what's important about having an agent, more than just being able to get a better contract for you. It's also about that separation and being able to sort of say, hey, that wasn't really me. That was my agent who said that to you. So I'm still cool with this organization.
Yeah. Yeah. And it keeps the emotions out of it.
Yeah.
It really keeps the emotions out of the player organization situation, because then, usually agents will teach you it's a business. It's a business. It's a business. That's the first, it's like agent 101 is you're telling these guys, no matter what, it's a business, and
don't take anything personally.
Correct. And your mom is going to take everything personally because it's your mom. It's just that simple. You're, no matter what it is, she's been babying you, you're her baby, and you're always going to be her baby, no matter if you're an NFL player or if you work at McDonald's. So, and somebody smacks you through the drive-through. So it doesn't matter how you look at it.
Will Smith style.
Yeah. They're going to Will Smith style him. And his mom can't fix that. So he needs somebody that's in his corner that's going to step up and say, look, if you don't like it, too bad. I'll find another team that wants him. And, and design a contract that's more suitable for him instead of for the team. And I think it's more team friendly than most other contracts are, because he didn't have anybody to advocate for him. So it's just my opinion.
That's right. Yeah, and I agree. Those are great points. We'll see what happens there, but he probably will get him going to an NFC team, maybe. I mean, you never know. A crazy trade could happen. But at the end of the day, the Chiefs are on top. I'm happy with what they're doing. And I think this could be a special year.
I think so, too.
This could be a special year. So, the last time I saw Quentin, the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. So, I think this is a good year. So,
yeah.
There we go, then. There we go. Well, guys, Quentin, it was great to have you on, man. Nice to meet you. And
nice to meet you.
We appreciate all your insight, and we're going to wrap this one up, but we are going to try and get a Spaces in sometime between now and Sunday. So if you want to give us a follow and jump on, or I'm sure you already are, if we are not following you back or whatever, jump on, make sure you DM us, jump on the Spaces. We usually let, 4 or 5 people that talk and get their opinions out, and make sure everybody out there give us a follow at chiefsfocus.com. We're also on Newsbreak now, so if you follow Newsbreak, check out Chiefs Focus on Newsbreak, because all of our articles and some other stuff's popping up on there. And we will talk to you guys next time.
See you next time, guys.
Peace out, guys.